Are you ready? It is the Thursday evening or Friday Eve edition of Weather for Weather Geeks. It's turned out to be yet another beautiful day today. Kind of gloomy this morning, but boy, was it a spectacular afternoon and early evening. We're getting into the time of the year now that we're into officially the autumn season in late September, where we start talking about foliage. And I sometimes I'm getting some questions now on social media. Hey, what do you think of this year's foliage season? I've talked about this some and including a blog post on ericwfmj.com about 10 days ago. So go check that out on my redesigned weather blog. But some fresh updates here on the current state of the foliage and a little bit on what we can expect going forward. Color locally, as is usually the case in late September, it's pretty spotty. Yeah, some trees are starting to show, even losing their leaves in some cases, especially the maples. But generally speaking, you're not going to find a whole lot of color across our region just yet. Now, not far to our north and east across the higher elevations of northern PA and southern and western New York, yes, there's certainly more substantial color there. As usual, those places see their colors pop usually before we do because they have colder nights typically, and some elevation has plays some role as well. So we're still 3, maybe even 4 weeks away from our typical foliage peak around here. One of the important factors when it comes into the quality of the foliage season, precipitation trends in late summer, early autumn, as well as temperature trends as well. With this week's update from the U.S. Drought Monitor, this comes out every Thursday, big explosion of moderate, even in some places severe drought indicated now across parts of the Ohio Valley and down into the southeast, especially in Kentucky. They're now officially in a severe drought from around the Louisville area, heading on east into the eastern part of the bluegrass state. But in a lot of Ohio, it's just abnormally dry. Your yard is probably pretty brown at this point unless you've been watering. And even in places that had wetter weather earlier this month, in Trumbull and Mercer counties, it's dried out considerably in the last 10 days to almost 2 weeks. And so, I don't see a whole lot of pattern change coming anytime real soon to suggest that we'll see a lot of rain, and so the dry conditions will continue and probably even get a little bit worse. Well, it was 2 years ago that we were in the middle of a late season heat wave that kind of will rival what we'll have coming early on next week as we wrap up September and head into October 1st and 2nd. We hit 90 on this date back in 2017, one of the latest 90-degree temperatures on record. The latest, I showed you this graphic earlier this week, was on September 29th. But one of the later ones occurred just 2 years ago. All right, kind of a gloomy start to the day this morning. Not much more than a passing shower or sprinkle in most spots. As we got into the midday and afternoon, though, boy, things improved in a hurry as this cold front rolled through. The breeze started to pick up, the drier air pushed in, and clouds and bees went bye-bye, and just a fantastic end of the day, a great sunset this evening. Dew points, as expected, kind of spiked a little bit right around midday before our front rolled through. It wasn't super crazy humid, but dew points did get up to around 60 before retreating as we got into the second half of the afternoon. Now the air mass is bone dry. It's going to stay that way through tomorrow. You can't really see our cold front when you look at the radar and satellite. There's just not much rain along it. It's a pretty moisture-starved front, but when you plot up the dew points, then it becomes a little easier to see where our front is. It is, of course, to our east at this point. There it is right there. Hasn't gone through Nashville or Knoxville yet. Hasn't gone through Raleigh yet, but it's certainly gone through all of Ohio and western PA. Columbus dew point down to 34 here in the 7 o'clock hour. This is a very, very dry air mass, and therefore it's going to be a very chilly air mass tonight. Now, nothing unusual for this time of the year, but it will be our chilliest night and early morning of the season so far in most of the valley. 43, 44, I think will be pretty common in the chillier backyards tomorrow morning. But rapid warm-up tomorrow as that high slides off to the east. We'll get into a return southerly flow, sending temperatures into the upper 70s. Be a great afternoon again tomorrow, and a fine evening for high school football as well. Late September, it could be a lot chillier on a Friday night. 73 at kickoff and not dropping very fast. Tomorrow night will be much warmer than tonight. Probably stay in the upper 60s throughout the course of football tomorrow evening, so you don't need the heavy hoodie and jacket for Friday night. All right, weekend, here comes summer. Now, this front's going to kind of wash out, and there's not really much of a temperature change on either side of this front. There's a subtle change in moisture. After a muggy day Saturday, in the wake of this front, it'll be a little less humid on Sunday. As far as rain goes, maybe there's a shower early, and as we get into the afternoon and the actual front pushes in, I can't rule out a passing shower or even a thunderstorm. The rain will be long gone by Sunday. Actually, SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, does have all of eastern Ohio and western PA outlined in the low-end risk of severe weather, kind of a 1 on a 1 to 5 scale. I don't think the odds of severe weather are all that high here locally. The instability is marginal at best. There's a little layer of warm air aloft that could cap things out, so I don't think the odds are real high. I'm not going to be shocked if we get dropped from this low-end risk with tomorrow morning's Day 2 outlook, but nonetheless, could there be a thunderstorm? Yeah, I can't rule that out, and I can't totally 100% rule out any of those storms getting a little bit frisky if they do happen to occur. In the meantime, the bigger story for Saturday is the warmth and the humidity. Dew points are going to be coming up, and pre-game temperatures in the 80s. It's a 6 o'clock kickoff at the Ice Castle against Robert Morris Saturday evening. Isolated shower or storm, something I can't rule out through about kickoff. I think those odds of a passing few raindrops will drop off fairly quickly as we get into the evening on Saturday. So I mentioned those dew points. Bone dry tomorrow. More humid Saturday. Maybe a subtle decrease on Sunday. And then not only is it hot, it is muggy during the first half of next week. It's really going to feel like summer big time. No kidding with the kind of forecast that we have. Right now, we're in 9th place on the list of hottest Septembers on record, but I don't think we'll be in 9th place for long. I think we're going to hover around here for a day or two, but then when the 80s kick in this weekend, we'll have some warm nights, and then the last day of September is Monday. I've got 86 in the forecast. That should allow us to climb at least a few spots, maybe into the top 5. You know, this list is interesting. It's dominated by the 1930s, and then look at all the recent years. Last year, this year, 2016, and just off this list is 2015, which was the 13th hottest September on record. This is one of those things when I post about on social media, sometimes I'll get snarky comments. Oh, it must have had global warming back in the 30s. There's an easy explanation for this. The globe was not warming back in the 30s, but North America had a very hot stretch of weather. Drought and heat dominated North America for a lot of the 30s, but it did not dominate the rest of the globe. In fact, you know, you can find some charts online that show a lot of below average temperatures across the oceans and across much of the globe in the 30s, with the exception of parts of North America, including the eastern U.S. All right, as we get into the longer range, yes, it is going to cool off. Now, does this look like an abnormally chilly pattern? No. But once the heat breaks during the second half of next week, in fact, a week from today, the heat will break. I think next weekend it's going to feel like fall, pretty close to average, mid-60s. There's a, in the 8 to 14 day outlook, we're in a little blue here, so there's a small chance at least that that 8 to 14 day stretch will end up coming out in the wash as somewhat cooler than average, but I don't think it's by a lot. But it's going to feel pretty chilly considering we'll be flirting with 90 and flirting with records and probably breaking records early on next week. I sound like a broken record with as much as I've been talking about the coming heat this week. It's really going to be something. Probably tying a record Monday, breaking a record Tuesday, and possibly tying or breaking a record on Wednesday as well. So look for more updates on next week's heat in the coming days from me on air and online. Thanks for watching tonight's Weather for Weather Geeks. Have a great Thursday night.